I married into the royal family with my sister. She married the emperor, while I married Prince Jing. Later, under pressure from his ministers, the emperor agreed to hold a selection of consorts. My sister, Li Yun, rushed into the prince's residence, crying that the royal family was heartless. She said, "I'm leaving. Are you coming with me?" I replied, "If you leave, then I'll go too." She sighed, "It's not that easy to leave. We can only escape by dying. Then you die first and I'll follow?" We both collapsed into tears, until she handed me a vial of faux death potion. The queen's sister clapped her hands. A personal maid approached with a silver tray, holding a jug of poisonous wine bubbling with a white foam and 2 jade cups. Lian wiped away her tears and gave me a bleak smile. "Sister, this is the faux death potion from Dr. Liu. He knew from the day father passed away that Shen Heng would never stay loyal to just me. I also know that you married Prince Jing, because I married first. Now that I'm leaving, are you coming with me?" I was dumbfounded. "Huh? No, sister. The emperor is holding a selection of consorts for himself. It has nothing to do with Prince Jing. You can die, but I don't want it." Damn it. I was just joking earlier. Before marrying Prince Jing Shen Che, I was merely the daughter of the household manager, living a life slightly better than that of the maids. Later, my father joined the Ding Wang in rebellion, won several battles, and was posthumously granted the title of Duke of Anghua. My sister and the Ding Wang were in love, and after their union, she was crowned queen. As for me, a lazy good-for-nothing, I benefited from my father's and sister's fortunes and married the emperor's half-brother, Shen Che. Now I am the proud Princess Jing, and even burping gets me praised in various ways by the servants. Except when Shen Che exhausts me in bed. Actually, I've been living quite well. Li Yun cried until her handkerchief was soaked. Father got into trouble because of Shen Heng's rise to power, and now, just 3 years after his death, he wants to change his heart. I quietly said, "But didn't father die from drinking too much?" Li Yun looked a bit awkward. That was also because he was too happy about Shen Heng becoming emperor and drank a bit too much. "I don't care. I don't care. It's all Shen Heng's fault." Seeing my clueless expression, tears welled up in her eyes again. "Sister, have you forgotten? Forgotten that Prince Jing has someone special in his heart?" Regarding that special someone of Shen Che's. After I married into the Jing Wang residence, I heard vague whispers from the servants. Rumor has it that she and Shen Che were childhood sweethearts, innocent and carefree. Their parents had already arranged their marriage, just waiting for the then Ding Wang Shen Heng to enter the capital, overthrow the tyrant, and hold their wedding ceremony. Unfortunately, that tyrant was desperate. He tied Shen Che's beloved to the city wall, forcing Shen Heng and the others to withdraw their troops. That beloved girl was noble and selfless. She didn't want the tyrant to continue harming the people, so she leaped off the city wall. Our army's morale soared. We charged into the palace, unstoppable. Shen Che was heartbroken, kneeling by her corpse and unable to rise. When Li Yun and I mentioned that goddess, we both sighed in unison. What a wonderful girl! Not only did Shen Che hold her dear, but I also felt admiration for her. Prince Jing has never treated you kindly. He hates you for taking his beloved's place. Sister, to be honest, my industries in Jiangnan are wealthier than countries, and I opened a tea house just for noble women, with handsome young men and ruggedly strong guys, even a legendary Kunlun slave that's said to be worth 2. Li Yun grinned mischievously. My heart skipped a beat. I'd heard that Kunlun slaves were especially favored by widows. Li Yun patted my shoulder. Rather than sulking every day, why not join your sister for some fun in Jiangnan? I lowered my eyes and smiled bitterly. Shen Che comes home late every day, always wearing a cold expression. Only in bed does he share a few words with me. Thinking of those unmentionable words made my cheeks flush. Before Li Yun left, she urged me to think carefully. After all, one of the candidates in this selection looks exactly like Shen Che's beloved. I tossed and turned in bed, until the maid outside lit the oil lamp, and Shen Che lifted the curtain, finding me wide awake with innocent eyes staring back at him. Without hesitation, he stripped off his clothes and pounced on me. After a while, I pressed my lips together, unable to resist thinking of my sister's words. "Prince, I heard the emperor is holding a selection of consorts. Would you consider finding me a sister?" Shen Che looked up, sweat-soaked hair clinging to his forehead, his phoenix eyes emitting a chill that made me shiver. He threw his damp clothes outside the tent, tucked my arm under the blanket, and embraced me to calm my breathing. "Okay, I promise you. Sleep now. I have court tomorrow morning." "All right." I yawned halfway before realizing. He must have something on his mind. Otherwise, why would he change the subject? I concocted a bunch of questions in my mind, picking a couple to ask Shen Che to see if he planned to bring anyone back. If he really brought someone home, then I could pretend to die and roam the world with my sister. Others laughed at my foolishness, saying if I were half as clever as my sister, I'd find a good match. But they never imagined, despite my foolishness, I ended up marrying the bravest man in the world. I secretly looked at the man lying beside me. I don't regret marrying him, but my sister is my only family. Wherever she goes, I will follow. Shen Che had his eyes closed, his warm breath brushing my face, sending tingles through me. Seeing him sleeping so peacefully, I felt sleepy too. Forget it. I'll ask him tomorrow. The next day, when I finally woke up, the space beside me was already cold. The maid helped me wash and dress. "Princess, which dress will you wear to the banquet today?" I squinted and spotted the pomegranate red skirt embroidered with golden threads. I remembered on our wedding day, Shen Che couldn't wait to press me down on the bed, praising how good I looked in red. He was the happiest then. "Let's go with that one." It just so happened that the peonies were in full bloom in April, and the palace held a flower viewing banquet, inviting unmarried daughters from families of fourth rank and above. The purpose was to allow the emperor to select potential consorts. As the queen's sister, she personally organized the event, showcasing her prestigious position. However, she didn't want to see any newcomers accompanying Shenheng, so she deliberately had me, the capital's most beautiful newcomer, dressed extravagantly to overshadow those self-important ladies. When I donned my vibrant red dress, the group of shy, charming unmarried girls seemed pale and dull in comparison. Li Yun smiled and held my hand. "We're getting old. These budding flowers are much younger and prettier than us." The group of young ladies looked at the dignified queen, then at the radiant Princess Jing, lowering their heads, too shy to boast about their own beauty. Of course, some couldn't help but criticize our intentions. Madame Ningwa came up to me, saying, "No wonder Prince Jing forgot his old flame after meeting Princess Jing. If I were him and saw such a stunning beauty, I'd forget all about my childhood sweetheart too." Lian glanced at me, worried I might feel awkward. Seeing my carefree expression as I touched my face and smiled sweetly at Madame Ningwa, she closed her mouth, forgetting that I was just a foolish girl. She must have only heard the flattering remarks, not the insinuations hidden in her words. Madame Ningwa, feeling frustrated, turned to the young maidens and sighed, "Though the princess is beautiful, she's still no match for someone new. I heard not only will the emperor select consorts, but Prince Jing is also going to take a concubine?" Madame Shang Shu pretended to be surprised. After all these years without a concubine, now that a beauty who looks just like the Jiangnan princess has come to the capital, he decides to take one? The noble women found a topic and exchanged remarks. I couldn't help but feel a bit upset despite my earlier carefree demeanor. Li Yun led me to a pavilion. "You heard that, right? Shen Che is going to take a concubine. Even though you're a bit foolish, your beauty makes up for it. But once that white moonlight appears, no matter how pretty you are, if there are conflicts living under the same roof, who do you think Shen Che will favor?" I nervously twisted the silk handkerchief in my hands. Shen Che was only after my body. Lian told me that men are fickle. No matter how beautiful you are, a newcomer will always be more appealing. "Sister, let's go to Jiangnan together. We've been with the Shin brothers for so many years. No matter how delicious the food is, if you keep using the same pot, it'll eventually spoil," Li Yun declared confidently. The day after tomorrow, I'll send a newcomer to your residence to play with you. Although he can't compare to Shen Che's handsomeness, he has his own tricks. Suddenly, commotion erupted from the direction of the pond. Every year, there are a few scheming women who intentionally fall into the water at banquets, hoping for a heroic rescue that leads to romantic entanglement. Li Yun seemed pleased. As the emperor, Shen Heng definitely won't jump into the water himself to save anyone. I hope the woman who falls in is the most beautiful of this year's candidates. That way, I'll have one less competitor. The crowd parted for us as we walked to the rocks to see which hero would save the beauty. When I saw Shen Che hand a drenched woman in red to a maid, standing on the shore, I felt he sensed my gaze and looked my way, just a glance, before leaving with the others. Li Yun recalled her earlier schadenfreude and hesitated to find the right words to comfort me. Prince Jing is always kind-hearted. That girl should know her place and not try to do something foolish. He wouldn't marry a woman just for that. My face turned pale as I asked Li Yun in a daze, what if, just what if, the person he saved looks like the Jiangnan princess? Li Yun frowned deeply. You can't be serious about having feelings for him. I bit my lip and said, no, you are more important than Shen Che. After returning from the flower viewing banquet, Shen Che didn't come to find me to explain what happened that day. With so many guards by the lake, I didn't believe the steward wouldn't arrange for skilled swimmers to be on duty. Why did it have to be him, a noble prince, who had to jump into the water? The maids in the residence said that whenever Shen Che came back late at night, he would stay in the study. When the steward asked if he wanted to let me know he was back, Shen Che told him not to mention it to me. What does that mean? Am I the kind of person who eagerly rushes to him when he returns? I sighed, feeling a bit down. I guess that Shen Che might have seen a beauty resembling the Jiangnan princess and didn't want to face me anymore. In my frustration, I ordered the kitchen to make an extra dish of crystal pork knuckle for lunch. The chefs in this manor are quite skilled. The pork knuckle was perfectly seasoned, the skin tender and melting in my mouth. Even the crunchy bones were exceptionally crispy. A few days later, my sister disguised herself and sneaked out of the palace, inviting me to go boating and fishing at Mingyue Lake. The main attraction was the sweet and sour fish from the nearby Dengyue Tower. Li Yun said, after our fake deaths, I want to take this chef with me. We can enjoy watching handsome men dance while eating sweet and sour fish. I chose a discreet emerald green dress, holding a peony fan to shield my face. Seeing my sister dressed like a boy, without a hint of worry about the emperor taking consorts, I felt a pang of envy. When we were younger, the servants in the manor praised her for being clever and resourceful, saying if she were a boy, she'd surely excel in court. But when they praised me, they only mentioned my stunning beauty, saying it didn't matter if I was a bit foolish, as long as my future husband adored me. I'd live well. But my husband doesn't love beauties. He loves his white moonlight. Suddenly, a boat nearby came gliding towards us, seemingly without a soul aboard. I saw the oarsman deliberately steer the boat toward us. Before I could dodge, a great force knocked me into the lake. The spring water was still painfully cold. The more I tried to breathe, the more water rushed in, and just as my consciousness started to fade, someone grabbed my collar and pulled me back onto the boat. Fortunately, my sister always arranged for strong palace maids to accompany her on outings. Once I was safely on the boat, the cold wind from the lake chilled me further, and I curled up shivering in my sister's embrace. Enjoying the lake is a refined pastime. How can you be so reckless? A woman in a red dress lifted the curtain, her gaze haughty as she looked at us. Li Yun and I froze in place upon seeing her. Years ago, when the Jiangnan princess visited the northern prince's manor, Shen Heng, then the prince, took it upon himself to care for this distant cousin. My sister and I disguised ourselves as maids and joined the group to play in the grasslands. The Jiangnan princess, dressed in vibrant red, laughed openly and joyfully. Li Yun and I had both witnessed her unparalleled beauty. Recently, rumors in the capital said that General Li's eldest daughter, Li Changhong, who guarded the border, bore a striking resemblance to the Jiangnan princess and often wore red. Perhaps it was a grain of sand blown into my eye, but I felt an inexplicable ache in my eyes. No wonder Shen Che praised how I looked in red. It turns out the woman he loves favors red attire. Yet, seeing her in that familiar red dress only confirmed my suspicion that the person Shen Che saved that day was indeed Li Changhong. She looked so much like her. Even I thought so. So, after missing his beloved for thousands of days and nights, did Shen Che also feel the resemblance? I tugged at Li Yun's sleeve, stopping her from seeking justice for me. There are so many people around. You're the queen, and you shouldn't be out of the palace. If word gets out, it will cause you a lot of trouble. I covered my mouth and nose with my sleeve, coughed lightly, and glanced at the head maid, Emerald. Emerald understood and called out, "Someone, execute the assassin targeting the Princess Jing." Princess Jing. Li Changhong scoffed. What a grand title. You're trying to catch those close to Prince Jing. Or are you saying the rumors of affection between you and Prince Jing are false, and even his personal guards don't recognize you? The calm surface of the lake stirred with an ominous breeze, lifting her red dress to reveal a glimpse of the silver fabric of the man seated within. My face turned pale as I met Li Changhong's provocative smile. A sense of helplessness filled my heart, leaving me speechless. Since Prince Jing is on your boat, you all should continue to enjoy yourselves. I buried my face in Li Yun's embrace and trembled, saying, I won't interrupt your enjoyment. Today is a day off, and he took time out of his busy schedule, not to accompany me, the Princess Jing, but to go boating with Li Changhong, whom he's only met a few times. He knew I had been knocked into the lake. Yet, he remained in the cabin, not even asking if I was hurt. In a day of marriage, 100 days of affection. Perhaps in Shen Che's eyes, he truly resented me for taking the place of his beloved. That's why he treats me so contemptuously. Shen Che returned from his outing in the evening, looking displeased. When he came to visit me, the maid I arranged told him it would be better not to see me, fearing it might worsen my illness. Over the past few days, I had been gathering information about Shen Che's movements from Emerald. I heard he spent a fortune seeking fine horses for Li Changhong and even confronted noble women at banquets who bullied her. Rumors about me also circulated, claiming that Li Changhong refused to be a concubine and Shen Che vowed to grant her the status of a primary wife, exclusively favoring her. A beautiful tale spread throughout the capital, and even the storytellers in the biggest tea houses began to share Shen Che and Li Changhong's story. Every week, 3 days were dedicated to singing praises of their love. Meanwhile, I, the Princess Jing, had become nothing more than a decoration. Worried that I might become gloomy from my illness, Li Yun sent a few of the most beautiful entertainers from Jiangnan to the prince's manor. One played the qin, another danced with a sword, and one kept me company in merriment. The young men, shedding their long robes, revealed their muscular forms. Their swordplay was captivating, their movements as graceful as cranes. I couldn't help but swallow in delight. Shen Che had always followed the rules, never revealing his physique during the day. At night, when the red curtains billowed, I could occasionally catch glimpses of the muscles on his arms in the moonlight. Beside me, a handsome man offered me a refreshing, sweet grape, and with the other hand, he caught the skin I spat out, his brow low and eyes gentle. Under their care, my cheeks grew full and rosy, and I had completely forgotten about Shen Che. I even forgot I was in the prince's manor. Shen Che would occasionally return during the day. Emerald, her pale face anxious, rushed to me, shouting, "Princess, it's bad. The prince is back." Everyone around was startled. Even the parrot in its cage squawked in alarm like me. I sat on the noblewoman's chair, directing the beautiful men to don maidservants' clothes, tossing the qin into the firewood pile, and pretending to sweep with the sword. When Shen Che approached, he saw my rosy cheeks, and the joy in his eyes hadn't faded. He stared at me for a while, his Adam's apple bobbing, a fire igniting in his lower abdomen. I felt my heart pounding, afraid he might see through me. "Why are you back, my lord? Is there something you need? If there's nothing, then why return?" Shen Che seemed taken aback, expecting me to show resentment or to interrogate him about Li Changhong. But I looked as if I wished he'd never come back, successfully riling him up. He lifted his long robe and pulled me onto his lap, saying, "Emerald said you were too ill to see me, so I took a day off to keep you company. Now that I see you, you look well. I was worrying for nothing." I shyly hid my face with the fan. "Not at all. My lord, you're my medicine." I was feeling dizzy, but the moment I saw you, I felt fine. Shen Che chuckled, charmed by my flowery words, his gaze wandering to my slightly open clothing, the white skin nearly transparent in the sunlight. I was startled by the desire in his eyes. Since I had experienced his neglect while he accompanied another, I no longer wanted to share the same bed with him. I was particular about cleanliness and disliked anything secondhand. "My lord, I'm feeling a bit dizzy, so I'll excuse myself from sunbathing with you for now." His arm around my waist showed no sign of loosening. Shen Che leaned down to sniff my hair and caught a scent that didn't belong to me, dark clouds gathering in his eyes. I was so nervous, I felt like I might be sick. Damn it, why wasn't he with Li Changhong instead of lingering here? "My lord, I heard you've been spending time with Miss Li. Why aren't you with her today?" Shen Che had always disliked jealousy in women. Sure enough, when I mentioned Li Changhong, he lifted his eyelids and quietly scrutinized me. I was sweating profusely, praying he would leave soon. "Are you jealous?" "Of course not. I knew when I married you that there would be other ladies serving you." I forced a stiff smile. "I think Miss Li is quite good. I've heard people say that she and you have been enjoying the mountains and rivers together, with mutual affection. I suppose the manor will soon welcome joyous news." After hearing my words, Shen Che showed no sign of joy. Instead, the temperature around us dropped sharply with the coldness in his eyes. Shen Che set me down and stood up, saying, "Since the princess is so open-minded, I'll bring in a few more good sisters for you. That way, you'll have someone to talk to. You don't need to go out and play. Falling into the water and getting sick only delays your service to me." I choked up, lowering my eyelids to hide my resentment. Fortunately, my closest person wasn't Shen Che, but Li Yun. A husband can have many wives, but a sister is irreplaceable. Shen Che glanced at me standing nearby, a pent-up resentment stirring within him. It would be better if I got angry and acted cute with him. Every time I saw him, I felt like a rabbit encountering a wolf. Shen Che didn't understand. He was my husband. Why was I afraid of him? As he swept away, he passed a young servant who was looking down, sweeping the floor. Suddenly, he caught a familiar fragrance. Shen Che paused, momentarily unable to believe his senses. I saw him standing in front of the handsome servant who had fed me grapes, and my legs went weak. If he discovered I was secretly enjoying beautiful men and fine wine, he might toss me into a pig pen and hand my position as Princess Jing over to Li Changhong. Emerald timely caught me. That handsome servant wasn't as dark as the others. He carried an alluring scent that could captivate any woman, a secret recipe from Fongting Tower. Shen Che frowned in displeasure and ordered, "You, lift your head." The young servant, trembling, dropped a sword that fell from the broom. Seeing the sword on the ground, Shen Che's expression darkened, and he hurriedly stepped back 10 meters. Before he could react, I called the guards to execute the beautiful servant on the spot. The handsome man stared wide-eyed at me as if accusing me of being a heartless villain. Shen Che turned to me, a smile filled with anger appearing on his face. "This assassin trying to kill me is quite handsome as well. If it weren't for this sword, I might have thought he was your distraction." I forced a stiff smile at him. "No one could compare to you, my lord. Rest assured, the only person who entertains me is your concubine. No other men will do." Shen Che ground his back teeth together and left with his guards. I slumped back onto the noblewoman's chair, exhaling deeply, relieved to be alive. "Emerald, tell someone to bury his body. The emperor has taken a concubine, the beautiful Li Fei, from a prominent family. Among them, the most distinguished is the daughter of the Minister of Works, known for her cruelty, as she snatched the favor from her younger sister upon entering the palace." It is said that Li Fei is petite and delicate, with feet like lotus flowers that can comfortably rest in a man's palm, captivating the emperor for 7 consecutive days. In past years, the royal family held dragon boat races at Mingyue Lake, where only my sister was by the emperor's side. This time, several beautiful concubines have joined, making my sister appear much more haggard. I sat in the best viewing spot at the Mingyue Pavilion, surrounded by noble ladies of the second rank and above. In the sultry summer heat, I lazily reclined on the noblewoman's chair, enjoying frozen lychees peeled by a palace maid. My fingers were delicate and fair. After marrying the Jing prince, I had become accustomed to indulgence, and even peeling lychees felt painful. Those noble women loved to flatter those in power. Hearing that the emperor favored Li Fei, they surrounded the minister's wife, offering compliments. The minister's wife glanced at me. This year brings many good fortunes. Not only have several beautiful concubines entered the palace, but is there also good news coming from the Jing prince's manor? I casually rested my fan on my lap, giving her a light glance.
What?
With so many daughters, is it not enough to send one to the harem, but you wish to send another to the Jing prince's manor? I see the minister in his prime. The lady should consider providing him with more beauties, to preserve her reputation as virtuous, and possibly have more daughters to be sent to the palace or to the manor as concubines. A moment of silence enveloped the Mingyue Pavilion. No one expected the seemingly foolish Princess Jing to be as sharp-tongued as the empress. The minister's wife's expression darkened. There had long been rumors about her mistreating her illegitimate son and poisoning her favored maid. Today, I was in a foul mood and didn't feel like engaging in their banter. Both side concubines and favored ones are still concubines. If they're happy to have their daughters as concubines, then why not marry them off to others as concubines? Cheers and shouts of excitement erupted from Mingyue Lake as Jing Prince Shen Che danced lightly on the boat's bow, soaring to the red drum and winning first place. All the ladies turned their gazes to the proud Li Changhong. Someone pushed Li Changhong, urging her to congratulate Shen Che. With a face as radiant as a peach blossom, her eyes shimmering with spring's light, she bit her lip and walked toward Shen Che. Seeing this scene made my heart feel like it was crushed under a heavy stone, and even my fingers felt the ache connecting to my heart. Even though my relationship with Shen Che was only physical, it didn't mean I wanted to see him in love with another girl. A senior maid of the empress approached the Mingyue Pavilion, asking the noble ladies and young misses to move elsewhere for their feast. At the banquet, the emperor sat beside Li Yun and Li Fei. In the past, the emperor would only speak with my sister, occasionally serving her food. This time, my sister was gloomily sipping her drink. Every so often, she would glance at Shen Heng, who was doting on Li Fei, who feigned shyness as she served him. My sister couldn't help but snicker. Suddenly, Li Fei stood up. A palace maid following her held a silver tray, and she approached my sister, Li Yun. Li Fei did not expect my sister to remain calm, smiling as she accepted the cup from her hand and drinking it down with ease. Halfway through the banquet, I felt an unsettling twitch in my right eye, sensing that something bad would happen. Just as my sister made to leave early, claiming she felt unwell, she suddenly vomited blood all over Shen Heng and Li Fei, collapsing into the arms of the senior maid. Panicking, I overturned the low table in front of me. Sister? In my haste, I stumbled and fell.
8.
In the resplendent Koan Ning Palace, even crows dared not perch on the branches and call out. In front of the courtyard knelt a row of palace maids and eunuchs. If their master was in trouble, they would share in the fate. Shen Heng was in a fluster, wishing he could kill all the useless doctors. In fact, I thought the ones who should die weren't the doctors serving the emperor, but the emperor himself, who allowed his concubine to murder the empress. If he hadn't taken in concubines, would any woman have poisoned the empress out of jealousy? The well-regarded Dr. Su released Li Yun's wrist and knelt before Shen Heng. I covered my cries with a handkerchief, weeping uncontrollably over Li Yun. Had I known, I would have agreed to pretend to die with Li Yun. Then she wouldn't have to truly die. With both father and sister gone, Would anyone still treat me like a child? Shen Heng sat pale-faced in a chair. Eunuch Li asked him how to deal with Li Fei. I raised my head, my eyes red. What's there to deal with? Just continue to favor her. With my sister gone, you can elevate your beloved concubine to the position of empress. Shen Heng glared at me fiercely. I wasn't afraid. I glared back. At worst, they could kill me too. Shen Heng turned his gaze to my sister, suddenly deflating, his hands clenched tight, trembling with the fear of losing his beloved wife. Proclaim my decree. Li Fei poison the empress. Give her a cup of poison. The minister shares the same crime. Eradicate the 9 clans. Hearing the decree, Li Yun slightly moved her fingers. Shen Heng pushed me aside, holding Li Yun's hand, his eyes bloodshot, filled with reluctance. But Li Yun seemed not to see him, offering me a meaningful smile. Sister, what will you do without me? With father and mother gone, I am also gone. No one will protect you anymore. I was close to tears, gasping. No, I don't need you to protect me. I can live well on my own. You must also live well. Li Yun shook her head bitterly. I can't live. I only hope you can live well. But, her eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. But will the cold Jing prince accept you when he is someone new? Shen Heng immediately replied, I will protect Li Qing. Yun Yun, you will recover. Do you remember Dr. Liu? I will bring him to you. He will definitely cure you. By the end, Shen Heng was sobbing, leaning over his wife's hand, his shoulders trembling from his grief. Li Yun didn't even glance at Shen Heng until her last moment.
9.
I was ill, heartbroken. I had Jade keep Shen Che out. I didn't want to see anyone but her. At night, I lay in bed tossing and turning, my insides feeling like they were on fire, making my throat smoke and producing only a hoarse sound. A large hand rested on my shoulder. The other gently brought water to my lips. After sipping warm water, I felt much better. I slowly opened my eyes and, through the oil lamp in the tent, saw Shen Che furrowed in concern, his expression slightly accusatory, as if he resented my loyalty to sisterhood, preferring to follow my sister into death rather than care for his feelings as my husband. Why are you here? Where's Jade? Jade is a loyal servant, unafraid of my anger. She listens to you very well. I forced a bleak smile. Your Highness, she is a good girl. After I die, send her to the countryside, give her the deed, and consider it my wedding gift to her. Shen Che firmly grasped my shoulders, his voice trembling as he spoke. What do you mean die? If you die, I'll have Jade die with you. I weakly nodded. Shen Che's fingers brushed against mine, trembling slightly. Did you marry me willingly, or was it because Li Yun is the empress and you wanted to be with her, so you married me instead? I looked at Shen Che's flawless face, different from my own foolishness. Everyone praised Shen Che for his intelligence, though his background was slightly inferior to Shen Heng's. I've heard many rumors lately, I said with a bitter smile. They say the Jing Prince's manor is expecting good news, that you like General Li's daughter. I've seen her. She's not easy to get along with. If you want to marry her, could you at least wait until I'm dead? That way, you won't have to work so hard to belittle me by marrying her as your primary wife. She could rightfully be your wife, and you could grow old together in my stead. Shen Che pulled me into his embrace, his warm breath hitting my icy neck, making me crave warmth. But the thought that this warm embrace had also held other girls made me feel sick. I won't marry her. Those rumors are unreliable. My relationship with her isn't what you think.
What do you mean by that?
I found it strange. But that day at Minghua Lake, she deliberately had someone push me into the water while you were in the same boat with her. How could you not know? When she used you to pressure me, you didn't stand up for me. A few days ago, you won the jade pendant for the dragon boat race, and I immediately saw it with Li Changhong. This isn't love. What kind of love is this? Just as Shen Che was about to speak, I interrupted him, suppressing my nausea. Don't say you love me. Loving me doesn't mean letting others belittle me. You love my obedience. That kind of love is suited for animals, not for me. I'm a person, not a pet. My obedience is a virtue, not a reason for you to insult me. I pushed against his chest with both hands. It's late. I can't serve you any longer. If you can't stand it, you can go find Li Changhong or even the maid for some company. Shen Che's jaw tightened, as if a storm was brewing. If I said one more hurtful thing to provoke him, he might pin me to the bed and punish me in ways unique to a husband and wife. Fortunately, seeing my pale lips and my heavy eyelids, Shen Che didn't take pleasure in torturing someone on the brink of death. He laid me back on the bed, gently caressing my cheek with his right hand. There's a misunderstanding between us. I will explain it clearly later. During this time, if you don't let Jade come to see you, I'll just have to drug her and sneak in. I was anxious. What if Jade takes too much and turns into a fool? A glint of mischief flashed in Shen Che's eyes. That's your problem. He tossed that line over his shoulder as he left, leaving me alone in the room to pound the bed and shout. I couldn't stay another minute with such a dog of a man. Suddenly, I remembered the fake death medicine Li Yun had brought me. Right, I can pretend to be dead. Images of a handsome young scholar from Jiangnan writing poetry drifted through my mind, and I fell asleep drooling.
10.
During the day, I prepared a small bundle for my escape plan of pretending to be dead. At night, I dutifully applied powder to my face, lying in bed pretending to be gravely ill. To confuse the dog of a man, Shen Che, who insisted on visiting me at night. The powder on my face thickened, while Shen Che's eyes reddened. If Jade hadn't told me that Shen Che planned to visit General Li in the borderlands under the guise of pursuing Li Changhong, and that he had the manor prepared to welcome a secondary wife, I might have been charmed by him to the point of wishing to die. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, Shen Che planned to take Li Changhong to visit General Li in the borderlands. This was the first time he returned to see me while the sun was still high in the sky. When he walked in, I was lying in bed, looking as rosy as a peach blossom while reading a storybook. It was a tale of one woman and 7 men. He saw me looking healthy and stopped dead, gripping the gauze curtain with one hand. I quickly hid the storybook beneath me. Your Highness, today, why are you back so early? I was early enough that I hadn't had time to apply powder to my face. Shen Che held me tightly, his eyes filled with deep affection. I came back to tell you that I'm going to the borderlands. Yes, I heard. Don't misunderstand. I'm going this time. No matter what your Highness does, I believe you. I gave Shen Che a sweet smile. You're my only relative now. You're so good. You wouldn't betray me, right? Shen Che nodded, his gaze fixed on my lips, desire flickering in his eyes. I rolled my eyes and pressed my chest against him. Shen Che clearly felt the unusual warmth and, without saying a word, swept me up and into the bed curtains. I panicked, grabbing his shoulders. As soon as I opened my mouth, he would kiss me senseless, leaving no room for my feigned illness to prolong the situation. An hour later, Shen Che dressed himself, glancing back at me, slumped on the bed. He chuckled. When I come back, I want a daughter just as lovely as you. I swatted his wandering hands away and turned over, presenting my back to him. Wanting a daughter was simple enough. He could go find Li Changhong to bear one. 11. On a dark, windy night, a black cat nimbly climbed to the branch. A caravan from the Central Plains stopped at an inn. Shen Che, exhausted from the day, received a letter from his subordinates. Remembering how I had looked like a lazy pig when he left, a smile that could melt the frost appeared at the corners of his mouth. However, as he opened the envelope and scanned the dark yellow parchment, a wave of dizziness struck him. He braced himself against the table, his eyes nearly bursting as he read the content about the death of his wife. If not for the fact that this letter came from his trusted confidant and that the poisoner was a Turkic spy, Shen Che might have thought it was just a prank from his spoiled little wife. Ching ching. Shen Che covered his eyes with one hand, a tear slipping from his fingertips and landing on the parchment. He had owed his wife too much over the years. She had too many secrets she didn't know about. He had planned to finish this important task and return to her side, to share a peaceful life, working at sunrise and resting at sunset. but heaven had not granted him that opportunity. Am I too wicked that you won't give me a chance to treat you well? King king, king king. Shen Che spat out a mouthful of blood, soaking the news of his wife's death. He knelt on one knee, forcing himself to breathe as he pressed the blurred letter tightly to his chest.
12.
Jade cried for 7 days straight at the princess's funeral. Finally, the steward, fearing she might also die in the royal manor, shoved a deed for 100 mu of farmland into her arms, trying to dismiss her. As soon as Jade received it, her face lit up with joy, and she picked up her already packed small bundle and left. The steward was left standing in place, feeling disheveled by the wind. A carriage drove towards the outskirts of the capital as the city gates were closing. Around the capital was a bountiful town called Yutian, where a courtyard sat beside a branch of the city's moat. Jade jumped down from the carriage and saw oil lamps hanging from the branches in the distance, with a group of people merrily barbecuing by the river. I took a bite of a juicy chicken leg and waved at Jade. Why did you come so late? Hurry up. I saved you a chicken leg. If you're any later, you'll only get the chicken's backside. Jade grinned as she approached. Hee hee, I knew you'd wait for me. This chicken leg is so delicious. Did you brush it with honey? Your mouth is sharper than a dog's. This honey is from peach blossoms. 13. When we arrived in Jiangnan, as mentioned by Li Yun, it was already late autumn, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of fruits. While on the road, Jade and I picked fresh peaches to eat when we got thirsty. Sometimes the fruit farmers weren't around, so we'd tie a small bag of silver to a peach tree branch. Jiangnan had spring-like weather year-round, and occasionally a light snow would nourish the fields, so the people here, unlike those from the north, had smooth skin. Even the men had delicate features. We were bored and heard that the Wind Pavilion was famous, with different levels of service where the higher the level, the more expensive it was. Ordinary farmers' wives could spend a few copper coins for a cup of tea with men who hadn't passed the scholar exams. I heard that the 4 top courtesans were incredibly alluring. Jiangnan's noble women had to spend thousands of gold to spend a night with them. Jade grabbed my arm with teary eyes, pouting. Miss, you know I lost my parents when I was little. I rolled my eyes. Let's go, I'll take you there. Your miss is nothing but money. Jade's eyes sparkled with excitement. Then I'll choose the strongest one. I pinched her nose. You're so unambitious, just choosing one as soon as you come out with me? 4 together, won't that be thrilling? The steward at the Wind Pavilion, seeing my bulging wallet, smiled so wide his eyes disappeared, directly sending a handsome young servant to take us to the highest regulated private room. A cup of tea passed quickly. The servant came in and poured 3 cups of tea, but didn't bring in today's main dish. The steward came to apologize. Those 4 top courtesans are unavailable. This is our fault at the Wind Pavilion. If you come back tomorrow, we'll definitely send you a novice, well-trained. Jade was very disappointed. I was dissatisfied and threw a bag of gold in front of him. The steward was even more troubled. It's not about the money. I raised an eyebrow and pulled out another bag of gold from my pocket. Then it's not enough money? The steward was so stunned by my gold that he felt dizzy, agreeing to talk to those 4 top courtesans. Before long, the wooden door of the private room was kicked open, and an overly handsome young man was surrounded by others. Who dares to steal my people? I locked eyes with the young man, and the cup in my hand fell to the ground. Sister? Sister. I rushed over and hugged Li Yun tightly, afraid that if I let go, the celestial goddess above would take my only relative away. Li Yun knew I had pretended to be dead to come to Jiangnan. She wasn't curious at all. Instead, she ordered a few discreetly built men who danced and stripped at the same time. We watched, our faces turning red. Later, Jade and I followed Li Yun to her most luxurious residence in Jiangnan. I heard that the golden yellow tiles were made of real gold. As soon as we entered, Jade's eyes sparkled at the sight of a handsome young servant guarding the door. Behind the servant were a group of elegantly dressed young men in white robes who greeted us gracefully. Jade's eyes practically sparkled, blindingly bright. Even the servant who scrubbed the toilets looked extraordinary, with a refined demeanor. At night, I squeezed into the same bed with Li Yun. She asked me, "I heard about your affair with the Jing prince before you did. I didn't expect you, who are usually so honest, would take the initiative to go to the Wind Pavilion." I scratched my face in embarrassment. That day, I was just about to drink the fake death medicine when I coincidentally saw someone sneaking poison into my food, so I pretended to eat it and fainted. Seeing me poisoned, that person confessed to poisoning me. Although Li Yun didn't understand, she respected me. "This is good. It enhances your credibility of being dead." I turned to look at her. Did that concubine, Li, really poison me? Li Yun fumed. "Just thinking about it makes me angry. That cup of wine truly was poisoned." Fortunately, I had the antidote given to me by the divine doctor. Otherwise, I really would have died. Concubine Li and her family are fools, thinking that since we don't have a maternal family as a support, they could poison us, and the emperor wouldn't care about us against the Ministry of Personnel. I felt speechless. Thank goodness I wasn't poisoned. To die at the hands of such people would be truly embarrassing. Li Yun said, "I heard that the Jing prince, upon learning of your death, ran to the borderlands and killed General Li's entire family, personally leading the army to attack the Turks. Are you really not moved at all?" I pouted. "When you died, Shen Hung exterminated the entire Ministry of Personnel's family. Why weren't you moved? Why didn't you run back to tell him you weren't dead?" Li Yun and I fell silent.
What's good about men?
They're all big pigs. How can you insult my favorite food?
14.
During the day, I explored the mountains and rivers with Li Yun. Whenever we saw a handsome young man on the road, Li Yun would use her bulging purse to entice him to the Wind Pavilion to perform. The Wind Pavilion had many special rooms. I enjoyed ordering 10 attractive young men to dance for me. Unfortunately, I wasn't accustomed to the local air. Whenever someone approached me and I caught a whiff of that uniquely mixed perfume, I couldn't help but feel nauseous. Eventually, I noticed Li Yun was the same. We sensed something was off. "You haven't had your period for a month?" Li Yun grabbed my shoulders and shouted. "I can guarantee, sister, you must be pregnant." I countered. "What about you? You've been out of the palace for 3 months, and your belly?" Li Yun sighed. "It's his." I thought it was just the local air at first. Li Yun looked troubled. "What should we do, sister? Should we keep the baby?" I felt conflicted too. "If you keep yours, I'll keep mine. If you terminate yours, I'll terminate mine." In the end, we delayed making a decision until it was too late and had no choice but to give birth to our children. 15. I had a daughter, and Li Yun had a son. She often held her son, trying to trade him for my daughter, which kept me awake at night, watching over her. Once the children could walk. Her son had a cold temperament. When he cut his hand, he didn't cry at all. Meanwhile, my daughter was a sweet little darling who loved to be spoiled. This made Li Yun both love and resent her. She often gathered strange trinkets to coax my daughter into calling her mother. Peach was a very filial little girl. Whenever she received something from Li Yun, she would personally hand it to me, which only frustrated Li Yun further. Peach received a jade hairpin and raised her little foot to put it on my head. I hugged her and asked, "Does mother look good?" Peach's eyes sparkled as she bit her little hand and sweetly said, "You look good. Mother is the best." Li Yun's son, Chen Ge, stared at the meteor hammer in the hands of a Kunlun servant, showing a hint of affection for the first time. Li Yun, resting her chin on her hand, wondered, "I don't know whose temperament he inherited. Neither Shen Hung nor I are this cold." Li Yun and I exchanged glances. Li Yun frowned. "I know my nephew resembles his uncle, but I haven't heard of anyone resembling their uncle."
16.
In the spring of the 6th year of Jing, news came from the border that Prince Jing, Shen Che, had single-handedly infiltrated the enemy camp at night and set fire to their supplies, creating chaos. He slayed the Turkic king, who was mingling with 4 or 5 maidservants. Legends of the god of war Shen Che spread throughout the streets of Jiangnan. Peach, having heard the stories of the god of war from somewhere, kept whining to Li Yun to bring him to the Wind Pavilion to work. Li Yun grinned and picked up Peach. "Does Peach want a daddy?" Peach glanced at me and shook her head. "Mother said daddy treats her poorly." "Peach only wants mother, not daddy." Li Yun showered her with kisses. "Peach is so good." 17. 3 months after Shen Che returned to the capital, he declined the emperor's decree to choose a new princess, riding his warhorse to Jiangnan. The emperor was troubled by his brother's stubbornness over heirs. "Princess Jing has been dead for 3 years. Why is he so obstinate?" Chief eunuch Li Quanqing shivered, thinking it wasn't just Prince Jing who was stubborn. The whole royal family was equally stubborn. The emperor, to root out remnants of the previous dynasty, had chosen concubines without consulting the empress, bringing several suspects into the palace. Over the past 3 years, there had been new arrivals in the harem, and some had left in silence. Soon, no one dared to send their daughters to the palace anymore. The court officials also refrained from urging the emperor, fearing he might take a liking to their own daughters. Shen Heng wasn't worried about who would inherit the throne. He had many years to waste. When his time was up, he would select a wise child from the clan as the heir. In fact, he most hoped Shen Che would have a child. Unfortunately, Shen Che was stubborn. 18. At 3 years old, Peach loved to play with the children in the alley. One day, it was mealtime, but Peach hadn't returned. I found it odd and asked Jade to go look for her. Before long, Jade came back. I impatiently scolded Peach. "It's so late. Why aren't you back? Do you want to be someone else's child?" Peach weakly called out, "Mother." I felt something was off. Looking up, I met a cold, striking face that lingered in my memory. I was so startled I stepped back, only to be ensnared in the man's embrace. Peach was caught in the middle, blinking as she watched her mother being kissed by a very handsome uncle. Li Yun couldn't wait to call us for dinner. As she entered the courtyard, she was met with Shen Che's astonished gaze. Li Yun's face turned pale. I said, "I'm just your wife, a stand-in to ease the loneliness. Do you believe me?" Shen Che clearly did not believe her. As night fell, he wrote a letter and sent it to the capital via a homing pigeon. 19. Shen Heng arrived in Jiangnan just before the Dragon Boat Festival. Li Yun simply styled her hair in a lily bun and chose a turquoise jade hairpin, standing gracefully under the willow tree by the riverbank, her head lowered as she bit her lip, her gaze tangled on her son. Shen Heng needed an heir. Li Yun also thought her son was not suited to remain in Jiangnan, but would be better off following Shen Heng to the capital as the crown prince. After several years apart, Li Yun was still as strikingly beautiful as I remembered, now with a touch of mature charm. Shen Heng, however, had been tirelessly working for the country, his hairline receding. I knew they needed some time alone. So I pulled Shen Che to a private booth in the tea house, watching as a light rain began to fall outside, a wave of melancholy rising in my heart. Peach really likes me, and I like you too. I won't go back to the capital with you. Then I'll stay here with you both in Jiangnan. Huh. I was taken aback, looking at Shen Che. You're a prince. How could you not go back? Shen Che poured me a cup of tea. I'll have the emperor grant me a fief in Jiangnan. I cradled the warm tea and took a small sip. Well, I won't be with you. Peach is your child too. I'll take a few days each month to send Jade to you. Shen Che's brows furrowed with suppressed anger. So you plan to have fun at the Wind Pavilion while Peach is away? I retorted confidently. What's wrong with a hard-working widow going to the Wind Pavilion? Shen Che's expression darkened. Was I unable to satisfy you yesterday? Mentioning yesterday made me angry. Who stays up all night like an ox, plowing in silence? I huffed. Yes, you didn't satisfy me. I'm just a wild and free spirit. I can't compare to the white moonlight in your heart. Shen Che frowned. White moonlight? The princess of Yuanyang. I felt a knot in my chest. Everyone in the capital says that if the princess of Yuanyang hadn't died, she would have been your crown princess. Nonsense. She's my cousin, sharing the same surname. Do you really believe that nonsense? Shen Che looked at me helplessly, and after a moment, perhaps realizing how naive I was, his tone softened. I'll explain everything others have said to you one by one. I pouted. They said you knelt before the princess of Yunyang's corpse and wouldn't get up. Shen Che nearly choked. That was indeed the case. Tears welled in my eyes. But someone kicked me into the water after she died. Shen Che looked at me with an unreadable expression. The one behind me was probably my father-in-law. I hadn't expected that answer. What about Li Changhong? Even if you were playing a grand game with the emperor, you didn't need to save her personally. Shen Che replied, that day they all saw Li Changhong fall into the water, but they didn't see me being pushed in. Shen Che pulled me closer, wrapping me in his arms, his cheek affectionately rubbing against my neck. The moment she pushed you into the water, I had already decided her fate. Qing, I truly care for you. I'm very invested in you. I know I've wronged you, but can you give me a chance to make it up to you? Back then, I was still a bit youthful and stubborn, always thinking you were indifferent to me, only marrying me to be close to your sister, the Empress. Later, I realized if you truly didn't care for me, you wouldn't have staged a false death over my matter with Li Changhong. His lips landed on my face, his hands slipping under my clothing, showering soft kisses like raindrops that quickly moved to my collarbone. It was my fault, and you can take revenge on me, but you can't ignore me. My face flushed like a hawthorn berry, his breath on my neck feeling scorching. If my sister doesn't go back with the emperor, then I… Before I could finish, he silenced me with an equally fervent kiss.
20.
A few days later, Shen Heng took Chengge to the capital, while Li Yun stayed with us in Jiangnan.
I was curious about what they had discussed that day.
Li Yun set aside the ledger in her hands, sighed, yet there was no trace of sorrow in her eyes. That year, the capital harbored remnants of the late emperor, and Shen Heng, to root them out, held a selection of maidens. Though he hadn't touched any of those concubines, he had indeed hurt Li Yun's heart. At the time, Li Yun didn't know Shen Heng hadn't been involved. She had watched the man she loved show affection to others, suffering in silence for years. Why should she just accept that it was all a misunderstanding and love Shen Heng without question? Li Yun said, "A broken mirror lies honestly in the trash. There's no talk of piecing it back together here. I don't love imperfect things. Once a relationship has flaws, I won't want it, no matter how much I liked it before." I studied Li Yun closely and noticed she quickly returned to reviewing the ledger, not showing any concern for Shen Heng at all. I sighed, then thought of Chengge. Li Yun said, "I asked Chengge about it together with Shen Heng. You know Chengge is clever. Locking him in Jiangnan to do business with me didn't work for either of us. I'd rather Chengge become a good emperor who benefits the people, just like his father." As she spoke, Li Yun's gaze fell on my belly. "I'm still waiting for you to have another little girl, like Peach, with Shen Che. You just keep having children while I'll help take care of them." My face turned red as I laughed and pushed Li Yun playfully. "Don't think I don't know. You're afraid after having Chengge, you don't want to have more kids." Li Yun's secret thoughts were exposed, and she playfully pounced on me, tickling me. Outside, the rain fell continuously, and mist rose along the riverbank. Pedestrians huddled under awnings, haggling with vendors. Outside, Shen Che held a beautifully delicate girl in his arms, reaching out to catch the rainwater dripping from the eaves. I leaned against the concubine chair, reading a storybook, and hearing my daughter's silver bell-like laughter made my lips curl upwards. In this tranquil moment, the moonlight pressed upon us, evoking deep feelings.